I know you're going to have questions. We have a microphone if you want to grab it.
How many primary employers move annually in the United States that would use, say, 50 acres and employ 2,600 people?
I don't know.
What do you see as the primary companies here in Pinellas? What's their average size?
The most frequent, I suppose that's what you want to know, because move is a relative term. A lot of it are expansions. The 2,000 job, 40-acre deal would be a mega project viewed by economic developers. They'd probably be given $100 million at least in incentives, because there aren't that many of them out there. The most frequent would be roughly 5 acres and 100 workers. That's probably the most frequent economic development project on a horizontal level, on manufacturing. They are smaller, but that doesn't mean they don't have a place and don't want to have a suitable working environment just because they're smaller. But the most frequent are smaller. There's no doubt about it. The irony is you have a bunch of big ones. And never assume they won't leave. Never. I remember back in 1983, IBM employed some 10,000 people in Boca Raton making personal computers. 3 years later, they weren't there. The community out in Texas, Plainview, Texas, did an economic plan for them. A lot of we don't want to change anything out here. And they had Walmart distribution, had 800 workers, and Conagra had 2,200 people working at the meat plant. And they said, that's all we need. That's all we need. We don't need economic development. 90 days after I left, Conagra gave 2 weeks' notice. They were laying off 2,200 people. Never assume they will never leave. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the big project, the 40-acre project, but the 40-acre campus-style quality employee project is looking for a Pinellas County. They're not looking for St. Lucie County. And so you're competing, you can compete in the highest level marketplace in economic development because of all the stuff you have around it, the university and all the stuff. And since you have what other communities want, these assets, take advantage of it. This is why, gosh, if you had it. But the most frequent is 5 acres. I talked too long. We never get through all these questions here, but.
Yeah, no, and Bristol-Myers Squibb is a good example, a recent example of a company we didn't have a space for in Pinellas County. Fortunately, they did stay in Tampa Bay and went to Hillsborough, but we didn't have a location to show them that was suitable size and ready to go.
You bring up the $30 million that we have for the tourism industry. Where do these counties, where do these cities get the money? I know how the tourism industry gets the money, but how do you get the money to buy and develop this land? What's typical?
Every state is set up differently as far as what their industrial authorities can do. Basically, it is the county government and or city governments committing a certain percentage of their ad valorem toward bonds. And a lot of it's through bonding. I don't know what the laws of Florida were, but Palm Beach County, right or wrong, issued $250,000 worth of bonds for Scripps. I mean, that's putting a lot of eggs in one basket, but you know, there are, and since other areas are able to do it, I'm sure that legally, but the key to this is not county government, though. I mean, your munis also need to participate in this, because you all benefit from this economic activity as the money flows. I don't know if we need the microphone or not.
Well, and Pasco County just recently did what is equivalent to the penny for Pinellas and used a good portion of that for developing their industrial park, so that's another potential source.
Do you have any commentary on, so you stated the innate economic impact of tourism, but the economic impact tourism has from a relocation standpoint. They come, they vacation here, and then they see the beauty, the lifestyle, and they relocate companies here as a result of vacationing, or relocate their family and then and seek employment.
No. In all my years of economic development, the location decision of any sizable project is based on economics. Now, you have some family-owned companies that could occur, but it still has to make economic sense for the company. I know, when I was in Palm Beach County running their economic development group, I was always told, oh, let's just get all the executives who are chairman of industry in Palm Beach and have them move their corporate headquarters here. And the reaction was, I asked a couple of them, I said, I don't want to move my damn business here. I want to try to get away from it. And so, you know, that came to a sudden stop real quick. Economic sense. Now, you might find one or two that happens, but that's not typical.
You advised that, if I'm not mistaken, you advised that we should acquire land and our initial investment should be $50 million, but if the company wanted to move here, we should discount it or give it away free.
Sure, if necessary.
What would be the benefit in us spending $50 to $100 million and then giving away land for free?
Did you
And
see
who would
the?
pay for it? But who would? My thing is, who would pay for that?
Well-
So who's on the hook for the $100 million that we would spend?
Well, first of all, you're not going to do 100 in one location. When I look at this, you're going to be doing 10-acre site, 20-acre site, 40-acre site, 50-acre site, depending on where the horizontal would go, which are your manufacturers. The sites would be bigger. Your high-rise vertical, possibly for corporate headquarters, is a smaller footprint, might be 10 acres. And so that all eggs aren't going to be in one basket. I just try to look at the cost of redevelopment, and it's not cheap, which is why private sector won't do it. So the government, if you don't provide these sites, you will have a declining economy. That's the bottom line. It's happened in every economy that didn't do it. So you really, I'm not sure you have a choice in the matter. Either invest the money or die. And so you invest the money. And I say, well, you might wind up having to give it away. All right, I'll give you an example. Would you want to give it away? An employer comes in, is going to be a metal fabricator. He wants a 50,000 square foot factory. He's going to pay $42,000 a year. That's marginally higher than your average wage. The industry's good, decent company. Would you give them the land? I don't know, because it isn't that great an impact. Now, you bring in a sophisticated research company that average is going to be $110,000. They're going to occupy 50,000 square feet of high-tech, state-of-the-art lab space. You've got people from all around the world going to be watching what they're doing. You going to give them free land? Yeah, give them free land because you want them here because the overall economic impact is case-by-case basis. Based on the impact they will have on the economy. I bring it up because I don't want someone to say, oh, yeah, we will not sell it for less than market price. Well, then don't even get into the game, because after you figure out what you got in it per square foot, you're not going to be able to sell it.
And they're still going to be paying property taxes on the full price. That's the beauty of it. We get our money back eventually in property taxes, as well as sales taxes.
Now, this is where you get your money back. The economic impact is where you get your money back. All those wages, all those jobs, all those sales taxes generated, it all comes back, which is why the cities need to be involved in this, because they're going to benefit from it.
Can you speak to the impact of energy prices, energy policy, and in Florida's case, the almost $50 billion that leaves Florida every year to buy energy from out of state?
Well, I can speak to energy.
Okay.
And my national economic presentation that I give, which lasts an hour and what does cost a lot of money, I go through the 5 things we have to do to change that trend of a dying economy, because our economic system has changed significantly in the last 25, 30 years. We went from a nation of generating wealth to one that borrows, transfers, and loses wealth. So how do we solve that problem? One is an abundant supply of inexpensive energy. If we don't change energy policy coming out of Washington, we're dead as a country. Manufacturers consume 23% of all electricity, and within 6 years, the plan is to almost double the cost at retail level of electricity. That's the plan. And so we will continue to drive out. So the bottom line is you can go to states that are serviced by the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, and get 4 cents a kilowatt hour electricity for industrial use. 4 cents is good. Then you go out to California, you can get 4 to 5 cents in Shasta County because of the Shasta Dam, because that was the deal to be allowed to build the dam, where they have a hydro plant there. But outside of Shasta County, I'm not sure you could find 14 cents a kilowatt hour electricity in California. So energy is extremely important. I don't know the situation in Pinellas County, whether or not you can get energy for your industry at a competitive price. But we must, as a nation, make energy more available and less cost to survive. By the way, California buys more electricity than Florida does because they haven't allowed a power plant to go in the last 15 years.
I'm curious about the population and employment numbers for Manatee County, which is part of a local influence here for Pinellas.
Yes. Well, you can go look them up on census.org. I don't know. I don't have them with me. I didn't look at Manatee County because it wasn't part of the metro.
Okay, thanks.
I know there's more people commuting to Pinellas from Manatee than in the past.
And far more that commute here than go the other way.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I just didn't have an answer to your question, but census.org, you just look up Manatee County, you can get it all.
Hi. This message for the county, I think, is pretty clear. At least it was to me. My question is, do you have any thoughts about how to deal with specific pockets of intense poverty within our county? Or is the presumption that to the extent we raise the overall economic well-being, that it lifts all boats?
Have those pockets of poverty always been there?
I beg your pardon?
Have the pockets of poverty always been there?
Yes.
Well, then they've grown. Well, this is a situation where the economy has been declining, and I did note to you your rapid growth in welfare. That is a big red flag. So I do not specifically address, because I look upon that as a community development issue. That the overall, if the economy is strong, the money is available to improve the economic quality of life of everyone. And by the way, that wage ladder I was showing you, if you keep setting your sights above the county average wage, then that climb will occur. And then eventually it will begin to suck everybody into it. You actually have an advantage here because you don't have 10,000 acres of land available to build houses where a whole bunch of people can come in and flood your workforce. You have a contained workforce where that hydraulic pressure I just described to you could very well occur. I did an economic plan for Corpus Christi several years ago, and they've done real well. Corpus Christi is the energy and a lot of other stuff going on. But I had revisited some of my data, and they had been doing a real good job at creating high-wage jobs. But the low end wasn't climbing the ladder. And that violates Bill Fruth's principle of economic escalation. You know, you're supposed to go up. And so I was very curious why. And the why basically is that a flood of low-skill workers, foreign workers, just kept moving in and flooding the workforce. So that there were so many available, the low-wage employers did not have to increase their wages. The high-wage employers did because skills determined what they were paid. And so my dynamic didn't occur there, but you're contained here. And so you're not going to have a flood of low-skilled workers come into your area, and the benefit could occur there as you begin to improve the economy. Yes, sir.
Two questions. First, when you're talking about giving the land, are you talking about leasing the land or airport or giving the land?
Well, these are the details that can be worked out. Your Air Force property is, strategically located in pretty good dirt, but that's lease only, and that's a barrier, being lease only. Now, fee simple title, but you put in certain contingencies. You just don't give a company, here's 20 acres of land, and we promise to build a building. Well, what if they never do? They got title to the property. Well, guess what? You don't get title to the property until we have certain assurances, and you have what's called clawbacks. That if you don't build the building as described, valued at $5 million, and you build some cheap tin structure that we didn't agree to, well, we're not going to give you the land. We're now going to have, the contract reads you owe us $400,000 for the land. All this can be written out. But if you do this on these great projects, tax abatement is also not, it's expected, but not forever. And it goes away. I mean, in Columbus, Mississippi, that steel plant now is paying $4 million in property taxes just to the county because their tax abatement went away. Whoa, gosh, the county just gushed with $4 million extra money.
How about our cost of production? We talked about that in the very beginning, and we haven't talked about it since. Where do we sit on cost of production?
I don't know, and that's an issue that I don't know if Mike's organization, because I know he has a good retention group, that the issues of cost of production in your county need to be addressed. You have some really good employers here, and they are making stuff that has international markets, and it's certainly a market in the United States, and they pay a great wage. And it's a shame that if you discover they had to move out or close down because of something you did. Now, by the way, aside from market conditions, the most frequent reason why a company will pick up and move to another community is how the first community treated them. The local regulations, taxes, fees, it goes on and on. That's the second most frequent reason why a company leaves a community. So this type of analysis, is there anything going on being inflicted by the county government or city governments upon our production community that is adding costs that perhaps are not necessary? I remember, well, I tell war stories of dealing with government, but some of those people might be in this county now instead of Palm Beach County. But it was, a lot of it was the water rates. I was in the town in Iowa and speaking, no, I'd say out in Redding, California. Great example. Do you have private water here or the county own it? Public water, all righty. So out in Redding, California, I'm speaking to all the government officials and community planners and everybody else. They said they want me to teach them about local economies. So I'm telling about the stories about how local government can cause the decline of their local economy through regulations, fees, and taxes. And I said, as an example, excuse me, water rates. Sometimes, raising water rates is like raising taxes. So the government doesn't want to do it. So what they do, because they have to have the money, because of federal mandates, they raise the industrial rates on the wealth producers. And in doing that, they raise these costs artificially, and it could be a point where the tipping point and the company has to leave. I'm telling you this, and the city manager of Redding stands up, no, the mayor of Redding stands up, points to the city manager and says, he's the one that told us to do that. I had no idea they had done that. So I'd be very careful, but that's an example that the wealth-producing community is looked upon as a gold mine for fees and taxes to support the populace, when in fact, those things have to be reduced as much as possible. Mike,
We're pretty competitive in Pinellas. A couple of the big issues cost-wise in Florida are the sales tax on leases for commercial property, which is pretty much non-existent elsewhere in the country. And fortunately, people don't realize that till they get their first tax bill and they're already sunk. But and the other one is the property insurance. Property and liability insurance is significantly higher in Florida than elsewhere. But again, hopefully they don't do their due diligence and they get here and then they find out. But as far as the local issues, the biggest one is the stormwater. We do need to figure out a way to handle stormwater on a regional basis. We've got to take care of that. We've got to take care of the nutrient loading. There's federal laws and state laws and all of that, but it costs money to do that. And there's a lot of pushback against the stormwater fee, but we've got to figure out how to solve that problem and do it in a way that allows us to redevelop a property. So Kelly and her team are looking at low-impact development, and I figure out ways to handle stormwater for a lower cost and still utilize most of the property. So those are kind of the big local issues. No. You're part of the solution, so that's exactly what we do.
Sir?
In the event the county decided to go ahead and condemn, say, 40 acres for an industrial development today, it would be at least 5 years before they could acquire a title to the property and redevelop the property for an industrial use. I would like to make a suggestion to Karen Seal and her committee. The Toytown landfill, the industrial property on the south side of the airport, immediately start putting it up for offers on it and get industrial users and sell the property and end up having some income that you could use to go ahead and condemn the property of the 40 acres in due course.
Well, you mentioned condemnation, eminent domain. I'm not one who supports that. And I'm not even sure in Florida it would be legal. There have been federal court cases about condemning for that purpose. But I think that you basically are going to have to pay above market price for this dirt, for these structures. You're going to have to do it. I mean, once word spreads, you've got $20 million a year to spend. Everybody's going to be raising the price of everything. But this is why you can be selective on your locations.
Right.
You
Okay,
choose
but
the
in the
location that the companies want.
Right. Well, I think like the area just to the south of the airport that the county owns would be ideal for an
Yeah, the
industrial
airport
use.
property, but I think it's only lease only though, because it's FAA property. That's a title problem. It's tough getting financing on
FAA?
property like that.
Oh, it is.
Location-wise, it's good stuff.
location is great.
Toy Town, we talked about Toy Town 15 years ago.
Right.
And boy, look, I drove by it on the way, coming here yesterday. I said, boy, it's a beautiful piece of dirt in the greatest location in the whole county. Too bad you can't build on it for the next 200 years.
Well, yeah,
But don't worry, you'll have land available 200 years from now.
okay. There may be other sites that
Well,
the
this
county
is
owns.
why it has to be, but it's not just county. The munis have to be involved in this because we're going to ask them, not me, but I get to leave town and leave you with this goose egg you got to work with. But it's a situation where, once again, it's new to your area. This is not new to most areas in the United States. I was in, Clinton, Iowa, a little burg. They have a 500-acre park. They've got 2 nice buildings there. And while I was there, they announced a project of a 50,000 square foot use. This is Clinton, Iowa, that put this facility in 15 years ago. And so, this is not new for most other areas. It's new here. But the problem for you folks is that you have to redevelop, which doubles the cost. Doubles the cost. Yes, sir. Now, I'm pointing to you, yeah.
I just wanted to add to your comments. My name's David Outlaw. I'm part of the Manufacturing Community Partnership. Manufacturing's changed. If it comes back, it's going to be different. The size and things and what you do is going to be entirely a different landscape. Yes, you're going to need the land, but what we're doing in manufacturing now is smaller and it's faster. What that entailed is something that the Tampa Bay Partnership told us last meeting. You have to develop your workforce. And to do that, you have to engage your community in manufacturing with the education. And this is something we haven't done very well, but we are on it and we're working on it. There's nothing new about what we're saying, but what you're bringing to us, I appreciate what your message is. It's dead right, and thank you very much.
Question?
Any other questions?
We have found you don't have to have the microphone. Yep, yes, sir. Oh, you're back. Is this number 3 or 2? Number 2. All right.
Back when James Moore was talking, we talked about the how to fix the political problem. We have 26 different municipalities, 26 different rule books.
Yep.
That needs to be addressed, and I guess that's more of a statement than because you probably can't fix that if you would.
Well, divided. Don't look upon it as 26. Look upon it as a series of steps. And, you know, if you look at, say, I got to build a 26-story office building, and oh my God, how am I going to do 26 stories? We do it one story at a time. And so when you divide it, break it up in pieces, and find, and I don't know your politics here, but yeah, I used to be a mayor, and I got along real well with the county commissioners, you know. So it's a situation where someone takes the lead, and you go to the best community who's most interested in doing this. Now you got one. Then you're going to get two. Then you're going to get four. And then all of a sudden, everyone's going to want to be on board. Because what you're going to do is create an intergovernmental agreement that when you have this property, and all these areas have invested, then all the areas share in the property taxes. Oh, yeah, that's what other communities do when you cross political lines. We invested, we're going to get a return. And so, but you set these rules up. But your statement about being ready 5 years from now is exactly right. If you started this back in 2001, you'd be rolling along. If you wait 5 years to start it, then it's 10 years from now. So you need to begin the process soon on developing the framework for what I'm suggesting. And it might be cheaper, it might be more money, you know, when you get into marketplace, but figure you're going to spend more, higher than market value for the property. Plan on it. You're not going to get it cheap, and you shouldn't condemn. I don't think you can condemn anyway. I know the federal court cases out of Massachusetts prevented that from happening, I think. Any questions? Another one? Ma'am, I used to be an auctioneer, and I would have called that a bid. Hey, all right? I'm talking to you back here. Hey, all right? Now, when I bid 25?
In the Hillsborough County, they've been going through a process of looking for land also. And they have large areas of the county that basically are not allowed to build. So their reaching build out is coming pretty quick. So Pasco's to the north. We're surrounded by water. And one of the things you brought out before was when you have adjacent areas that have a fair amount of wealth, and that helps you, it sort of seeps back in. So in this particular scenario, where we've got Pasco to the north, Hillsborough's marginal to the east, and Sarasota has a big bridge. How does that affect us?
You got Manatee to the south.
Manatee is to the south, yeah.
Well, this is where you're different from Milwaukee County because you have the barrier. You have, was it 4 causeways and a couple of roads. But still, you can travel it. That even by doing what I'm talking, what will happen? Suppose you're successful in what I'm talking about doing. Your quality of the economy will improve because your focus will have been on the higher end stuff. So that will then force the quality of your housing to improve and have the money available for redevelopment. But that still won't be enough to do all the redevelopment you're going to have to do. Because this is a big area, and you're going to have a generational change that's going to be occurring over the next, if it hasn't already started, a generational change. And so you're going to have a lot of product owned by 22% of your population that's going to come on the marketplace. So this is why the rest of the area needs to also develop economically. You'll be competing with greenfield space in Pasco. There's no doubt. You've been competing with that already. But for someone who wants a quasi-urban atmosphere in the center of action, they would then have the money to pay for the redeveloped housing product that we're talking about. So this is why the rest of the economy needs to also grow. Plus, if Pasco can't be the catcher's mitt, they will leave the area, and then you will have, the whole area will have economic decline. You got to hope if they have to leave your county that they're going to stay in the region. Yes, sir.
What about startups? What kind of startups do you try to attract? What kind of
Yeah. I glossed over, a lot of the problems because I wanted to get there. And I don't think you have a terrible problem with startup, but I don't know how. What is the center, the technology center that you have? Yeah, that's at capacity and it's sort of matured. But I think that many years ago that started as a startup, didn't it? Yeah, well, that's an extremely successful project. So if that thing's full, you got to start over again. But startup is a long-term thing. You need university many times involved, but you don't have to, but you have a better chance if your higher education is involved in it. But you do need a physical building. You need a place where these companies, now, but when we say startup, we're not talking about someone starting up a insurance agency or a new restaurant. Those are consumptive businesses. We're talking about something that would be primary, that they might develop a new hitch for a tractor or something, something that's going to be sold outside the area. I mentioned that because the company in Amarillo did that. So we had the startup needs a physical place. They need a mentoring team. And your typical startup facility for economic development is for companies that will become primary. So do you have a building now? You're working on one? All right, we'll get
We are. We just opened, and that's Tanya Elmore mentioning that. There's a new 6,000 square foot incubator in downtown St. Pete, and the
All right.
city has actually donated land free of charge, actually a $1 a year lease for a 40,000 square foot building that we're raising money for now. So we're very, very involved in developing an incubator space as
But
well.
startup's a long-term thing. But Dell Computer was a startup, and it built Austin. So it takes time, but it's one of those 3 economic development programs you need to be involved in. But even with the startups, suppose you have a startup that gets in there and says, all of a sudden I need to have 5 acres and a building. It's going to have to go to Pasco because the land isn't available. I mean, there are scattered sites. You're not completely out. There's scattered sites around the county, but it's a real problem. Questions?
Well, we do want to, speaking of the university connection, Sophia Wisniewska, the chancellor for USF St. Pete, was here earlier. I don't know if she had to leave, but we do want to acknowledge, thank you. Thank you for being here and being a big part of that. Because USF St. Pete is part, as far as the opportunity to develop our entrepreneurial network, both St. Pete College and USF St. Pete have strong programs in entrepreneurship, and that'll help us move forward in these job startups. Any others?
I've got a
Anybody
million.
else?
Yeah, I
Oh.
do. You talked about
It's your
manufacturing.
3rd or 4th question.
I know, I'm in a competition here. So you talked about manufacturing, and then you opened it up a little bit, and it sounded to me it was more like production. So one of the questions that I have is, do you see software, web development, et cetera, fitting in that category or not?
Oh, yeah. When I mentioned the primary industry, we had that list up there. I mean, corporate headquarters was one of them, but we get into information. I guess that's in professional services is where software development probably is. And you get down the line and you see, oh, yeah, it's quite valuable. I bring up manufacturing because most people don't realize it is your biggest industry. It has the greatest economic impact, so don't forget about it. Don't say goodbye to it because you're going to be hurt if you do. But there's all sorts of other stuff within your, home shopping network. Who would have thought the economic impact of Nielsen Marketing, Nielsen Research, that is beautiful company. And they don't make anything that I'm aware of. They generate quality, they do research. And so there's a lot of that type of thing, mid-story, possibly high-rise. If you limit yourself to high-rise development for corporate headquarters, not all corporate headquarters want a tall beehive. A lot of them want like a campus setting. But when Boeing went, the Boeing project going back to 2001, coming out of Seattle, it came down to Austin and Chicago and Denver. And finally went to Chicago, but that they gave incentives for about $1 million a job. It was a $60 million incentive package for 500 jobs. But that deal almost fell through because they couldn't agree on lease terms for the space they were leasing in a private building. They weren't going to lease about half the building, and the square foot rent was too high. Boeing was going to walk. And so land, it still always comes down to real estate. But there's a lot of quality primary employers research. I mean, they're out there, and they're already in your county, which is why I'm so optimistic that you can do so well, because you are so diversified.
We've got one last question here, and then we'll go to a break.
Just had a question. First, for the record, there is a love-love relationship between the county and the cities in Pinellas. Just want to make sure you knew about that.
Oh, things have changed then since I.
They have. I just want to be sure on your numbers. You mentioned $200 to $300 million in local investment. That was based on the 500 acres?
Yeah, that's pretty much, I was trying to figure out what, just generally, what it would cost per acre to purchase at above
Okay.
market rent, tear down, clean up. It might not take that much cleanup, and have ready to go.
And
I was
why
looking at
hasn't-
roughly $800,000 an acre.
Okay. And why hasn't this taken off in Florida? Just because of the abundance of land?
Oh, the idea of community-owned industrial parks was never a big issue. Now, there's some of them now. St. Lucie County has one. They're starting to grow. And the reason why it didn't take off is because Florida grew around tourism and retirement. It didn't grow around industry, manufacturing principally. And so there was never any emphasis on having government-owned industrial parks because the government was there too busy approving housing projects and tourist hotels. I mean, if you look at 1975, 85, 95, that's what was occurring. Even though at one point manufacturing was the biggest industry in Florida in 82 or 83. If you totaled up manufacturing and everything else, retirement was second. And farming was third. But it just wasn't, but in all these other states, industry is what their economies were built on. And ironically, your economy here in Pinellas County is built on industry. Maybe by accident, but it is. Is that it?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. And,
Ladies and
Bill-
gentlemen, thank you.
Appreciate it.